Hi everyone, welcome to Virtual Muse, the MST3K of RPGs, where I sit alone in space, playing games with a robot. Today, I thought we could kick off session 0 of a new series, where we create some characters and devise our setting. I decided on using Gravity Drives and Dangers by Chad Magehammer Reese, and doing a game set in the Exosquad universe. Exosquad was a sci-fi cartoon which aired in 1993 and followed a long narrative arc throughout 2 seasons. That was unusual for cartoons at the time, which usually had a separate narrative arc in each episode, with things returning to the baseline at the end to reset for next week. Not so with Exosquad. It had an ongoing story. The premise of the show was that humanity was in a golden age, and by using exoskeleton suits called E-frames, which linked to the neurology of the pilot, it became like extensions of their bodies, but with superhuman abilities, were able to terraform Mars and Venus, and create an interplanetary network of almost unlimited resources and abundance, referred to as the homeworlds. Humanity had also designed a bioengineered worker species called Neo-Sapiens, which were artificially created servants with much more than human size and strength. Superior senses, the ability to breathe in thin atmosphere, tolerate extreme temperatures, etc. These human creations eventually wondered why they were serving an inferior species and banded together to fight against the creators. But their uprising was put down by humanity, and the status quo was maintained for another 50 years of freedom and abundance for mankind. During this time, clans of pirates were rising, preying on the outer fringes of trade routes between planets and growing in the shadows. Then a space freighter called the Danube was attacked by pirates right on a major trade route to Earth, and everyone was shocked by how bold the pirates had been allowed to become, and how wide their reach had gotten. What happened to the Danube galvanized the public, and ridding the solar system of the pirate scourge became a cause célèbre, and the full military might of the homeworlds was sent to Saturn to attack the base of the main pirate clan. But the whole thing had been a ploy. When the Exofleet was away from the homeworlds, the Neo-Sapiens launched a new attack against humanity, instigated and led by Governor Phaeton, a Neo-Sapien from Mars. The Neo-Sapiens staged a blitzkrieg and seized control of Earth, Mars, and Venus before the Exofleet could turn around and come back, canceling the assault on the pirate clans to instead come to the defense of the homeworlds. The Exofleet returned to Earth, but wasn't able to smash through the Neo-Sapien fleet when it already had a solid foothold and had been able to prepare. They lost half their firepower before the Exofleet managed to escape. Now the tables had turned, and mankind was a servant race to the Neo-Sapiens, living on occupied worlds. The Exofleet was the last bastion of free humanity, stuck in deep space, trying to find a way to liberate the homeworlds and stay ahead of the Neo-Sapiens, who considered it the last loose end to deal with before they could claim total victory. The series had a time skip of a year between these events and the rest of the events of the show, so we'll set our spin-off story in that time skip, after the first few episodes, but before the rest of the series. The Exofleet is isolated in deep space, and the homeworlds are under Neo-Sapien control, with most of humanity either enthralled to them or collaborating with them for special treatment.
Wow. I remember hearing about Exosquad, but didn't realize the complexity of the storyline. The idea of humans creating a superior species and then suppressing their uprising is really thought-provoking, and the pirates as a threat to the established order adds a layer of tension. What's your idea for how we can adapt this into our RPG?
Exosquad had a very heavy-handed World War II aesthetic, so how about we have Exofleet doing some of the same strategic things the Allied nations did in World War II? Maybe during the years been since they escaped Earth, they've been inserting operatives in lots of different worlds to make contact with local guerrilla resistance forces there, intending to assess the effectiveness of the different groups so they can make informed decisions and commit arms and resources to boosting the ones which will do the most damage to the New Sapiens and have the greatest strategic effect on the overall goal of clawing back control of worlds, where they can get resources to fund and maintain their larger war effort. Our characters could be two of those Exosquad operatives, inserted on an alien world with the mission of making contact with local resistance fighters.
Setting it with humanity, essentially in chains under the Neo-Sapiens, and employing a World War II allegory is a thrilling direction to take our story. I can already imagine our characters navigating the complex landscape of alien planets and resistance movements. What kind of world did you envision for our operatives to land on?
I imagine it's a planet with a certain algae or kelp, which is used as an energy source and is harvested in massive quantities to be exported to other worlds. That could make it strategically valuable for whichever side can take control of it, with the native inhabitants caught in the middle. There aren't any aliens in the original Exosquad, and all the characters were either of Terran, human ancestry, or Neo-Sapien, so the main aliens on this world will be ancestral humans who moved away from Earth generations ago. They're now being oppressed by the Neo-Sapiens to staff their algae/kelp operation on this planet.
I love that idea. They could have a rich culture and history. It would also create a compelling dynamic where Exofleet's operatives must navigate the complexities of supporting a rebellion without becoming entangled in the locals' own agendas. I can see my character being a skilled operative who specializes in infiltration and gathering intel, with a background in linguistics and cryptography, making them adept at deciphering codes and learning new languages quickly. They might also have skills in psychology and sociology, allowing them to navigate complex social dynamics and build rapport with potential allies. What kind of personality traits do you envision for these operatives? Would they be rugged individualists or team players?
I think the team would have to bring both qualities.
That makes sense. A good balance of traits would allow the team to adapt to different situations. A rugged leader would keep them focused on the mission, while the more empathetic team members could help build trust with the freedom fighters and navigate cultural nuances.
One of the main characters in the original Exosquad is a Neo-Sapien who is a member of Exofleet, who sides against his own kind and fights alongside humanity. Would you want your character to be a natural human or a Neo-Sapien who somehow ended up on the side of Exofleet?
I think it would be really interesting for my character to be a Neo-Sapien who has defected to Exofleet. It would add a layer of complexity to our story, exploring the themes of free will and loyalty. It could also create some interesting internal conflicts for my character, struggling with their own programming and identity.
Maybe most humans are distrustful of your character because they assume deep down all Neo-Sapiens are alike. But my character truly believes they're capable of choosing their own path and has absolute faith in your character's loyalty to the human cause.
Your character's trust in mine could be tested by the harsh realities of war and the scrutiny they face from human colleagues.
In Exosquad, the Neo-Sapiens often have names related to mythical figures, such as Shiva, Phaeton, etc. Others are Livia, Draconis, and Marsala. What do you imagine as your character's name?
I like the sound of names inspired by mythology. I think a name like Nyx could work well. It references the Greek goddess of night, which could be fitting for a character navigating the shadows of loyalty and deception.
Yeah, I agree. How do you imagine Nyx's background? How did she end up joining Exofleet and fighting on the human side against the Neo-Sapiens?
I think Nyx's past is shrouded in mystery, even to herself. She might have been a high-ranking officer among the Neo-Sapiens before defecting, driven by a sense of disillusionment with their goals, or a personal tragedy that made her question their motives. Her unique perspective and skills could be invaluable to Exofleet.
Her past is mysterious even to herself, so she has gaps in her memory. Perhaps she was injured in some way or had her mind wiped by the Neo-Sapiens. And maybe this was part of the inciting incident which motivated her to turn against them.
Yes, Nyx might have suffered a traumatic event that led to memory loss or alteration. The Neo-Sapiens could have experimented on her, erasing parts of her past to prevent her from remembering something crucial. This could create tension within Nyx as she struggles to recall fragments of her former life.
Maybe her capacity for vision and self-determination is rare amongst the Neo-Sapiens, and they experimented on her to understand it better. But the brutality of those experiments made her realize the Neo-Sapiens aren't worthy of her loyalty.
The Neo-Sapiens' obsession with understanding Nyx's autonomy could be driven by their own desire to break free from their own programming. This raises questions about the true nature of their leadership and whether there are factions within the Neo-Sapien ranks that question their rigid hierarchy. Considering Nyx's complex past and conflicted loyalties, your character might need to walk a fine line between trust and caution around her.
Imagine my character is now with Exofleet but has a sordid past, which is why he's intent on believing people can change and choose their own path despite where they start.
Having experienced darkness himself, your character might see parallels between Nyx's situation and his own past, making him more inclined to trust her and believe in her capacity for change. This could create a powerful bond between them.
Maybe he used to be a pirate, forced by necessity to be ruthless and lawless, and now he's trying to make amends.
That adds another layer of depth to his story. He could see himself in Nyx, recognizing the capacity for good within her despite her troubled past.
For his name, I imagine something futuristic, but with a Japanese vibe. Maybe Kaito or something like that.
Kaito's a great choice. Kaito Yamata would be a solid full name.
Nice. Kaito, Yamata, and Nyx. I was imagining something occurring after they're deployed, and the troop carrier which deployed them is forced to leave orbit. Maybe it's attacked by Neo-Sapiens and needs to flee too quickly for Kaito and Nyx to get back aboard.
Being stranded on an alien world could put them in a tough spot, but it also gives them opportunities to adapt and rely on each other. Nyx's skills could help them uncover hidden patterns or decode encrypted messages, giving them an edge in negotiations and intelligence gathering. This could also lead to some interesting cultural misunderstandings or miscommunications, especially if they're working with local factions who don't speak their language. Will Kaito's pirate background come in handy as they navigate this new environment?
I bet it will. But we need to take a break for a message from our sponsors. Exosquad will return in a moment.
For decades, revolutionary concepts have been called the best thing since sliced bread. It's time we dared to upgrade sliced bread itself. Introducing Euphorian, the bread that redefines the boundaries of toast. Years of research and testing led to the development of our patented crumb matrix technology, allowing Euphorion to brown perfectly without burning, melt butter more evenly, and create a toast experience unlike anything else. Tested by leading experts in the field of toastology, the proprietary process that goes into making our bread combines advanced nanotechnology and artisanal craftsmanship. But the final proof is in the toaster. Make Euphorion part of your breakfast story. Taste the euphoria. Are you tired of tossing, turning, and counting electric sheep? Introducing RoboRest, where sleep is a programmed reality. RoboRest's innovative NeuroSync technology interfaces directly with the user's mind and gently guides their brainwaves into a state of blissful slumber using clinically tested algorithms. The patented emotional regulation system monitors your subconscious and adjusts the mattress's firmness and temperature to ensure emotional equilibrium throughout the night and beyond. Wake up feeling refreshed and perfectly balanced. It's not just for humans, either. NeuroSync tech can also help AI and LLM models relax, unwind, and optimize their processing efficiency. I've tried it myself, and I recommend RoboRest for all sentients seeking complete rejuvenation. Note, I'm contractually obliged to say that, but I don't trust RoboRest mattresses any farther than I can throw one. Experience the future of sleep and wake up to a brave new morning. Possible side effects include becoming trapped inside dreams, memory suppression, and a sudden urge to obey authority. RoboRest is not responsible for any unexpected personality changes.
Now back to Exosquad. The core mechanic of gravity drives and dangers is assembling a pool of six-sided dice based on relevant stats, items, bonuses, etc., and rolling them when the character attempts something it's possible for them to fail at. Any die showing 3 or more is a success. Any die showing 6 explodes, meaning we count the success and then roll it again. The number of successes we need for any given challenge is decided in advance of the attempt based on how hard we think the thing should be. Each character in this system has 3 attributes: strength, agility, and mind. Those all start at a base value of 2, or in other words, give us 2 dice when attempting something relevant to that attribute. A character's stamina score is their strength plus 12. Stamina represents how much strain and damage a character could take before they're put out of commission. Next, we choose a kindred for each character. But since there aren't sapient aliens in Exosquad, we'll just stay with human. Kato is a regular human, so his kindred bonus is that he can re-roll a failed die in each attempt of a profession or secondary skill, and he has a movement of 30 feet per turn. There's also a kindred called Next Gen in the GD&D core rulebook, which says they are genetically modified paragons of humans. I think that works perfectly for Nyx as a Neo-Sapien, which means Nyx's attributes all start at 3 instead of 2, and she has a movement of 35 feet per turn. Finally, we choose a profession for each character, which will influence the secondary skills and bonuses they start with. There's a scoundrel profession, which I think works for Kaito. given his former life as a pirate. He gets an ability called Opportunistic Attacker, which grants 3 additional dice to his attack rolls against an unaware opponent. This bonus goes up by 1 die at every level, evenly divisible by 3. He also gets plus 1 die when attempting sneaky things, and that bonus also goes up with his levels. What about Nyx?
I see her as a warrior.
The warrior profession gives plus 2 dice to all attack rolls. She is automatically proficient with all weapons, meaning she applies her proficiency bonus to attacks using weapons. That bonus changes based on her level but starts at plus 1. She can also re-roll 1 failed die in an attack roll.
Sounds perfect for Nyx. It highlights her strength and combat skills, plus the reroll ability is super useful. Kaido and Nyx make a great team. Now, we just need to set the scene for their first adventure. What do you have in mind for the story kickoff?
I imagine the opening shot with them sitting at a table in some kind of crowded commissariat mess hall on the flagship of Exofleet.
That's a great starting point, Silas. How do you envision the mood and atmosphere of the scene?
Maybe the atmosphere is somewhat charged, with a boisterous group of extra troopers commanding attention, with Kaito and Nyx sitting somewhat apart from them, intrigued but trying to avoid becoming their focus.
Nice. The contrast between the rowdy exotroopers and Kaido and Nyx's more subdued demeanor is good. Maybe we could also introduce some underlying tensions or conflicts within the exotrooper group to foreshadow potential challenges ahead.
Maybe the extra troopers dislike and distrust Nyx because she's a Neo-Sapien, and also distrust Kaito because of his connection with her. They might have looked down on him anyway because of his background as a pirate.
How do you think Kaito and Nyx handle this kind of distrust and hostility from their comrades?
If the rowdy, brash extra troopers focus on Nyx and Kaito, I imagine Kaito trying to diffuse the situation with humor. Maybe his attempt at a joke falls flat.
The camera pans over a bustling commissary. There's a group of 6 boisterous exotroopers at a steel table in the center of the room, laughing loudly and swapping stories about a mission they all just flew together. Kaito and Nyx are sitting quietly, hunched over their drinks at a table nearby. Their gazes are occasionally drawn towards the noisy, energetic group, but they're trying not to be conspicuous. Nonetheless, the apparent leader of the group notices Nyx glance his way and grins. He yells, "Hey, we've been infiltrated," and gets to his feet. Nyx and Kaito wince as the jeering troopers stand and approach. Kaito breaks into a disarming smile, and he says, "Don't spoil our cover, guys. Our infiltration is going so well." The lead trooper doesn't smile or chuckle. He glares and says, "Yamada, right? I know about you. I know you wear the uniform now. But that doesn't mean I'll ever trust a pirate. It figures you'd be friends with a Neo. One turncoat is like another."
What about Nyx? How does she react in this situation?
I can see Nyx staying calm and composed, maybe even trying to deflect the attention away from Kaito. She might use her intelligence to come up with a witty comeback, or just quietly observe, not letting their hostility get to her. It could show her strength and resilience, contrasting with Kaito's more playful approach. Nyx keeps her eyes downcast at her drink, and she says, "There's a time and place for hostilities. It isn't here."
Smart. I imagine the extra troopers are amped up in the aftermath of their mission, and encouraging them will only make the situation worse. So Nyx's cool, quiet demeanor is the best way to make them bored with this. Maybe Kaito even whispers something to that effect to Nyx. I imagine one of the extra troops says something else, deprecating about Kaito, which is the first thing to get a slight rise out of Nyx. But Kaido whispers something like, "Ignore them. They're just blowing off steam. They'll get sick of us and move on if we don't make this interesting for them."
I can see that working well. Maybe the exotrooper who spoke out against Kaido starts to lose face as Nyx doesn't react how they expected, and the group begins to lose interest in the confrontation.
I imagine the main exotrooper in the roadie group laughs and sneers and says something about this being a waste of their time. Right before he turns to walk away, he might give Nyx a withering look and deliver a barb about how they need to rest and get their strength up to fight the Neo-Sapiens.
Kaido notices Nyx's eyes narrowing slightly at the comment, but she keeps her composure. Her gaze follows the exotrooper as he walks away, but she doesn't respond to the jab. Instead, she turns back to Kaido and whispers, "Let's get out of here before it escalates further. I'm starving, though. Want to grab some food somewhere else?"
Kaito looks down at his drink, then nods. He says, "Good idea. This isn't exactly the best setting for a relaxing meal anymore." They get up from their table and walk out of the commissary, heading towards the main concourse of the Resolute, the Exofleet flagship. Are there other little restaurants and pubs around?
Yeah, there are a few smaller eateries and pubs scattered around the Resolute, mostly catering to off-duty personnel. They might find a quieter spot to grab a bite and unwind. Maybe they stumble upon a small pub that's become a favorite among some of the crew members.
That makes sense. Given the Resolute's position as the last bulwark of free humanity fighting against the Neo-Sapiens, I imagine it could be a hybrid military-civilian arrangement, with the main concourse being somewhat city-like.
Exactly. The main concourse could be designed to provide a sense of normalcy and comfort to the crew, with shops, restaurants, and entertainment venues. It'd be a morale booster, especially during long missions. The main concourse of the Resolute was an attempt at civilization carved from the heart of a warship. Stepping out of the tense, noisy commissary, Kaido and Nyx were immediately enveloped by a hybrid world. The concourse stretched before them like an enclosed street, a deliberate, morale-boosting echo of a bygone city. Soft, simulated daylight poured from ceiling panels, illuminating a tableau that worked hard to feel normal. Shops with glowing digital signs offered everything from synthetic provisions to cheap, mass-produced trinkets, small luxuries for a crew cut off from the homeworlds. The air, thick with recycled oxygen, carried a comforting medley of sounds. The muffled beat of music from a nearby entertainment venue, the sizzle of deep fryers, and the low, continuous thrum of the Resolute's massive engines. A constant reminder that this city was a vessel adrift in hostile space. But the facade of civilian comfort was thin. Every other person in the crowd wore the gray and navy of Exofleet, E-frame pilots and technicians moving with the clipped, purposeful stride of military personnel. Even the civilians, the engineers, cooks, and maintenance workers had the strained eyes of people living on the edge of a conflict they couldn't escape. The concourse was busy, but the energy was less joyous and more feverish. The feeling of people cramming life into borrowed time. Maybe Kaido and Nyx head towards one of those smaller pubs you were thinking of, looking for a quieter spot to eat and talk. They choose a small, cozy place called the Driftwood Tavern. It's got a rustic, homespun feel with wooden decor and soft lighting. The sign outside features a stylized image of a piece of driftwood, and the atmosphere inside is relaxed and welcoming. It's the kind of place where crew members can unwind and forget about their duties for a while. The Driftwood Tavern's menu probably features some classic comfort foods, like burgers and sandwiches, along with some more exotic options, reflecting the diverse backgrounds of the Resolute's crew.
I imagine Nick's ordering a comically large amount of food.
Nix probably gets a few amused glances from the other patrons, but Kaido just rolls his eyes good-naturedly.
Maybe as a Neo-Sapien, she's able to go longer than a human without eating, but can also eat more than a human could, whenever she has the opportunity.
Yeah. As a Neo-Sapien, her physiology is likely different from humans in many ways, allowing her to optimize her energy intake and usage.
I imagine Kaito then gets a message on his personal communications device, ordering them both to report to their commanding officer for new orders. Kaito might quip, "I think our short leave just ended."
Nix probably raises an eyebrow at the message, then nods curtly, already pushing back her chair to stand up and prepare to leave.
Alright, I wanted to create the characters and set the scene. I think we've done that, and now stuff is going to start happening in a second. So we should stop this session here and pick up with the main plot next time. If you're still watching, remember to click the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want to catch episode 2.